National Assembly has responsibility to rescue this country. There is a systematic and institutional fraud that has been going on in this country, yet this government say that they are fighting corruption. And that is why, like we have repeatedly said, there's appeared to be lack of understanding on what really corruption is and how to fight corruption. Because if you think political corruption is not a problem, like Jonathan said, corruption is not a, stealing is not a corruption, right? So also this government, in their action and their thing, they think that political corruption, rigging, abuse of rule of law, refusing to comply with freedom of information, refusing to, legislate key important legislation like Proceed of Crime Bill, POCA, they think that those things are not corruption issues. Corruption issue, in their own thinking, lies only on recovery of asset because the government was broke. So the only thing they can do is to chase, the yesterday looters. So as they collect the loot is not accounted for. So the jewelries, the gold, the car, the houses, the plots, the estate, the cash they collected, no central register where you can see what the custom has collected, what police has collected, what ICPC has collected, what EFCC has collected, what code of conduct tribunal had collected, what NLDE, right, they collected. Because these are all multiple agencies collecting, asset. No transparency in terms of its utilization. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to keep quiet while we are dying. God has given us the opportunity at least to speak the truth. Even if they will not take it, let us satisfy our own conscience that at least we have said it. If we all keep quiet and allow this systematic looting and deprivation of Nigerians, virtually making all of us as working class, making us to be poor, is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. So this is the reason why we think it is important that government should actually focus its attention in recovering and blocking those leakages rather than continuously continue to borrow money. And this borrowing, it is invested in the development. At least it will create job opportunity. It will give healthy living for Nigerians. It will also be used to educate Nigerians. If you do these three things, at least Nigerians will appreciate that, yes, the loan is worth collecting. But you cannot continue to be collecting this loan and you cannot account for what you have done with the loan. And this government in particular had collected several loans. No any reports on how it is being utilized. We have a Fiscal Responsibility Act that clearly tells you how and what you need to do, in terms of borrowing. But all of it is like not, being complied with. So that is why we think it is appropriate to come to talk in the National Assembly to draw the attention of our legislators to remember that all of them, they have a stake. Even if you think you have money, the COVID had exposed the fact that you may have the money, but you will also die with the poor here. So there's no way you can run to America, no way to run to London, no way to run to Europe. That is why you need to, when you are a public office holder, you need to think for the country. If you think for yourself alone, when the disaster comes, it might be difficult for you to escape. It's scandalous that a lawmaker that is supposed to carry out responsible oversight will now have to go and be a contractor. It's scandalous, and it goes contrary to the code of conduct of legislators, which they have copy here. But what has happened is that, you see, when a new legislator comes, he's supposed to go under induction to understand the implication of some of these actions. While the Senate approved 5.5 billion naira for the priority project, the House of Representatives also approved 22.7 billion that was rejected the previous year. The latter was said to finance key infrastructure in the country. Time and again, civil society organizations and other stakeholders have called for accountability and transparency in the management and utilization of recovered funds. Yet the story remains the same, as recovered loot are looted and alleged borrowed funds are diverted into personal pockets. We therefore call on the leadership of the National Assembly to restrain from further approval of borrowing and mandate the executive to recover misappropriated, mismanaged, and looted funds as stated below. In 2018, findings from a series of audits of the oil and gas sector carried out by the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, (NITI), showed that NNPC and its upstream arm, NPDC, had failed to remit 21.7 billion and 306.07 billion to the Federation account. These were amounts due from three main sources: Federation assets divested to NPDC, and NPDC legacy liability, payment for domestic crude allocation to the NNPC, and dividends from the investment in the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Company, paid but withheld by NNPC. Again, the Auditor General reaffirmed that as of June 30th, 2019, 160 agencies defaulted in the submission of the audited account for 2016. 265 agencies defaulted in submission of the audited account for 2017, while 11 agencies had never submitted any financial statement since inception. Yet every year they allocate money to them. No accountability, nothing. Nothing to show that they have spent the money. So it's just money they decide to do, whatever they want to do. And the legislative oversight is so poor that this can continue without being checkmated. In total, the audit revealed that the sum of 20.67 billion in various taxes, pay but in the year under review was not remitted to the consolidated revenue funds of the federal government. In 2019, the former executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue, Mr. Tunde Fowler, noted that Nigeria loses about 15 billion to the tax evasion annually. In the first 5 years, federally collectible tax projection gap has amounted to 7 trillion naira. Again, the embattled acting EFCC chairman, who has been suspended, was alleged to have declared 539 billion as recovered funds instead of, according to them, 504 billion as earlier claimed, among other allegations. Sometime last year, the three Nigerian refineries operated at capacity as low as 5.55%, while the country's importation of refined crude accounted to over 80% of its consumption. Again, June 2020, publication of the NNPC 2018 audited financial statement showed that 3 of the Nigerian poor refineries drove 1.6 trillion in cumulative losses recorded in their operation since 2014. I mean, I hope you are following this huge money that is cleverly, fraudulently diverted, no accountability, and yet we continue to go and borrow so that our grandchildren will be perpetually in poverty. In January this year, the Nigerian Senate resolved to prove the cooperation over the sum of 396 million, which was spent on turnaround maintenance of the refineries between 2013 and 2015 without any positive result. It's not good to continue to do proof, no report. It's not even in the public domain, and no legislative action, no executive action. So it is just business as usual. So I think it is important that Nigerian leaders, they need to fear God. They need to do things, with zeal and patriotism in this country. This amount of money that we are not losing for nothing. It's going into some people's private pocket. And yet, every Nigerian now every average Nigerian, or any Nigerian that is decent, is finding it difficult to survive. Yet this billion are just going to personal pocket. Between January and May 2020, the Interim Management Committee of the NNDC has been accused of misappropriating 80 billion naira. 80 billion naira, not million, billion naira. Even if you are going to go to each houses in Niger Delta to share this money, you would have at least removed the hunger that is suffering many people. But some individuals just sat down to just, corner this into themselves. Northeast Development Commission is presently also being proved for mismanaging 100 billion voted to commission barely 1 year ago without any significant impact on suffering refugees across the Northeast region. If not heartless people, how can these people who have suffered, brutal, violent violation by Boko Haram, and even the intervention to provide some relief for them, now some people just, that money disappeared. I mean, who will ever take us serious in this world? If you can do that to refugees, to people who have suffered attack, killings, by these criminal terrorists, and now you have come to use pen to also terrorize them. This is really wickedness.